America's racism and violence. This was just before January 6th, 2021, which we discussed on the show and how it foreshadowed what was to come.
For those of us that have been paying attention, the handwriting has been on the wall for this. I feel like the white supremacy that allowed Trump to reign and that we saw at the Capitol still exists in the halls of our Congress and people that are supposed to represent us and in the fabric and the DNA of our nation.
I had to write down a couple of those lyrics that really kind of struck that chord. The reality of it is you wrote this before January 6th. So that says a lot about what already is before what happened.
That was our conversation that night, almost a year ago today. And in the ensuing year, top Republicans have only grown more defensive of that day. It's a type of dissent and normalizing of violence that Kraft explores in a brand new song out right now called State of the Union Part 2.
They say don't throw stones if you live in a glass home, but America is Ritten's house. Tommy Sugar Ritten's house and rebuilt from the bone. Body cam, service proof of the audacity. Mass shooting casualties accepted mad casually. Underneath the hatred, who you? It ain't so hard to pronounce a pronoun, dog. We ain't know then what we know now, dog.
It's a searing new political commentary. The song also argues how aging and success can dim some people's commitment to the revolutions they say they support, as well as the selfishness in the COVID wars.
You had some values when you was young, a lot of empty nesters, a lot of let's be betters, but a lot of get these checks first, a lot of attention seeking disguised as hefty efforts. Asked them about a vaccine, they said my body, my choice. In Texas outlawed all women's rights, ain't dudes looking like somebody bodied their voice. Son, I ain't hear a peep. Every time the wolves come around, I ain't hear a sheep. Our demise will be that failure, thinking we can hoard science. Our inaction is action, thinking we can ignore violence. A team only as good as its 12th man's health, and we've been raping and pillaging our bench for centuries. Welcome to the repercussions, possibly the end, and we finger pointing to avoid that we our own enemies.
It's a powerful statement, and the artist behind it is back on the beat tonight. Here is Marlon Kraft joining us now, along with Michael Steele again, together about a year later. Welcome back to both of you.
Good to be back.
Thanks
Good to see you, Marlon.
Good to see you.
Marlon, here you are weighing in again. It's a tour de force of a song. Tell us what you are conveying.
Well, thank you. And I mean, first of all, just seeing the clips from last year, thinking about white supremacy in the halls of our Congress, off the top of my head, we got the Voting Rights, Act, which again has been shut down yesterday, which is clearly a target on the rights of people of color to vote, particularly in condensed areas. And then we got, what we've seen in Texas and other states with trying to challenge Roe v. Wade. As we know, an attack on women's rights is a staple in white supremacy. But really, this song was a lot more internal this year as things have gotten bleaker. And I think that a lot of people, even that, consider themselves progressive or with the same views as we have a hard time really caring in a way that is really active because things seem so bleak. And we have a hard time saying just how very bleak it is. And what I wanted to kind of convey here at the end of this is you can accept the reality of the bleakness because that's the first step in figuring out how we in our daily lives do things and pick careers and make decisions and choices towards being a part of the change and progression that we want to see. That sort of smile in the face of the fire, contentment and happiness is not diametrically opposed to accepting just how terrible things are right now.
Michael, what do you hear here?
Yeah, I would agree with that. In fact, I would probably take it a little bit further away from the political, which is what I was struck by. Marlon just used the term progressive, but I don't think people should take it in a political context. And I think that's what this video speaks to is the part of the problem is that we hear what we only want to hear. We see what we only want to see. Right. And if we continue down that road, then we're going to be where we are. And so the reality is that he calls to our conscience in the song is something that's right in front of us. And the question is, what do you see? Like in that section where you talk about, my body, my choice, and how, until I say it isn't. Right. Until the institutions say it isn't. And so when you're calling on people to recognize where they are, sometimes that's one of the hardest things in the world to do. But one of the greatest ways to begin to open up that conversation, as we've known throughout history, is through music, through poetry, through playwrights. And that, to me, is a form of leadership that is undervalued a lot of times. And so I really appreciate what this brother's done in terms of not just stopping at 2020, but now taking that and putting in in a different context, but actually in some ways the same context as we start 2022. I think it's pretty powerfully done.
Yeah, I love that. I want to let Marlon respond and play one other part of the song we identified, because you think about whether we start with that imagery of January 6th and how much propaganda and lies, and they were both doing the thing and filming themselves doing the thing. And we're in a society, and we're talking here on television, but everyone can be a broadcaster and publisher, and there's no right or wrong to that. You don't want to just say, oh, the new generation came up with that, so that's their problem. It's companies and corporations that have made that such a big part of our lives in the first place. But you have some interesting thoughts on that. Let's take a listen.
Whole generation of look at me, I read Marx, but work for a corporation. Everything performative. I ain't different. I sit on the left, but got way more to give. Instead, I'm taking my first. I'm not broke checks to buy throwback jerseys that we just couldn't afford as kids. My inner child trying to be glorious too. Just like you, my trauma hurts. We all damaged goods. But I'm just saying there's a lot that if we can, we should.
What are you saying there, Marlon, and what are you hoping people who might be closer to your age or in their 20s take from that?
I mean, I think we can all take from that, regardless of age. I think until we address the psychological, physical, and generational underpinnings of trauma at the root of all of our issues, including and especially, white supremacy, misogyny, homophobia, all of these things, until people are able to look into their own lives and have compassion for their own selves and understand the root of some of their hatred, some of their actions, I don't think we'll be able to make an inroad into fixing them. And so in that line and in that section in particular, I was kind of including myself. I'm far from perfect, and I appreciate the kind words from Michael, and I appreciate you having me on. But just me doing one of these every year wouldn't be sufficient, despite other things I try to do. I'm always trying to do more. But I think that's another reason that maybe people in my generation or younger people run, because we know what's the odds and we know what's stacked against us. And it's very difficult to face that and feel like you're going to be imperfect. But part of that healing of that trauma is having enough love for yourself to be imperfect in your fight and keep fighting. Fight's not a fight if the only outcome is win,
Right. Yeah. Marlon, for those who might be interested, where should they go online if they want to find you or your music?
MarlonCraft.com, any Spotify title, all that stuff, Marlon Craft. And I also have something called The Center. If you'd like to support me direct, thecenter.marloncraft.com. It's crowdfunded. I'm not signed to a label or any type of corporate entity. And that is part of me trying to walk the walk a little bit.
Independent artist. We did this once last year. We're going to keep doing this when we have the occasion. Appreciate you two coming back for this reunion. Marlon and Michael, thank you both.
All the best.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We will be right back.